Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center studios. You know, where Dave is aged like fine wine and I more like milk, sour and chunky. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Dude, sour and chunky might be how my video is coming out today, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Fucking glitchy Glitchenstein and the Glitch Factory over here. On a 75-foot Ethernet cable yesterday. Tried to plug this bad boy right into the router. Didn't seem to help much at all. I do have some new, amazing space-aged fiber optic internet coming into play by next week. But Chad, if our audience this morning is noticing, dude, I'm freezing, that's just me. It's not you. It's me. It's not you. It's me.
Just don't move as much. Your audio is fine. You're just a little glitchy, but that's all right. You know, we'll work through it. It's cold back where you're at, so that means everybody is curled up in front of Netflix or Prime or whatever they're watching, and it's sucking all the power out, it looks like.
I don't know what it is. I'm going with a whole new internet provider, and this is a local operation as opposed to like a national conglomeration, right, that services certain areas. But I'm going to go with a local internet provider that's giving me a direct, dedicated 200 megabits upload, 200 megabits download. This is super nerdy, but that's what's happening. Hey, before I go on too far, because I love this stuff, our good buddy, Eric from La Crescent. Chad, you don't know Eric from La Crescent, but the audience of the Sports Carnival absolutely does, and he's coming up, boomstick. DC, glad you're back. Eric from La Crescent. Still working in my typing skills, obviously. Have the notification teed up for 8 o'clock. Brother, that's awesome. That is awesome. Love having you back.
And Neil Duda's checking in. Apparently he took yesterday off. We played one of your tracks at the end of the show, Neil, but you weren't there. So
that's all right. It is what it is. We do what we got to do. Got a fun show coming up this morning here on the Sports Carnival. While my audio might be perfect, my video might be. So with that said, we've got a lot to unpack. UWL football coach, great friend of the show, Matthew Janus, is going to be joining us. I'm using his full Christian name this morning, Matthew Janus. No man bun, but still an exceptional coach. Eagles flying high, beating the heck out of Eau Claire on Saturday. He'll join the program at 8:30. Chad, Monday Night Football last night was absolutely atrocious.
Stinker.
It was absolutely atrocious. Joey Miller, good friend of the program as well, Joey Miller, sent me over his plays last night. He went over 45 points. Why? I have no question. Took Denver. I think he took Denver plus the 4.5, which would have been okay. And then I think he put in a parlay, an extra leg of a parlay for a player prop bet. Needless to say, I admonished Joey just a little bit like, dude, you're going over in a Denver Chargers game when Justin Herbert is playing with broken ribs. And This morning's Twitter poll question, if Morning Wood's popping up, this morning's Twitter poll question at the Sports Carney is asking you this. Is Russell Wilson cooked? Because, Chad, we've heard a lot of times, and especially you, being back up there in Yakima, Washington, home of Seattle faithful for some reason. But in Yakima, you had heard let Russ cook, right? Let Russ cook. Let this guy go out and do what he does. Well, now I'm just wondering if Russ is actually cooked. He started off great, 10 for 10 last night, 116 yards in the first quarter. In the second half and in overtime, because the game went to overtime, for God's sakes. In the second half and overtime, Chad, 3 for 11 and 15 yards. So I think it's a fair question. Is Russ cooked? And then, of course, we're going to have a little bit to sprinkle in about the start of the NBA season. 2 games tip off tonight. The champ Warriors, they're going to get their rings against the lowly Lakers, who are only 6-point dogs. Load up on that game, sports betting fans. Load up on the Warriors tonight, -6. Just pile that one in high and deep. You got to take that. And the Bucks start on Thursday, but there's some injury news.
Yeah, there is some injury news, and of course it involves Chris Middleton, which is sad because of last year, and obviously they missed him in the playoffs. But it could be a couple of weeks. It's not just a couple of games. Initially it might have been the opening game and maybe game 2 or 3, but it looks like it may be a couple of weeks now, and that's too bad for Bucks fans. Like, you know, everybody in Wisconsin's reeling from the Badgers and the Packers, and now you hear that news. But I mean, their Bucks are going to be fine. You know, they've got Janus, they've got Drew Holiday, they've got a few players. I think they'll be fine. They'll weather the storm. There's an 82 game season. It's all right.
It's a marathon, not a sprint in the NBA, a lot like Major League Baseball. And speaking of weathering the storm, my mom is checking in here this morning, Chadwick, and she says, with respect to our internet connection, maybe it's the weather. Maybe we have to weather this storm. So perhaps you are right, Mom of DC. The Bucks are going to be just fine. Plenty of ammo in that particular arsenal right there. Janus, as you've mentioned, Grayson Allen is still a player that I really, really enjoy watching. Bobby Portis got an extension. You mentioned Drew Holiday. And there are some new players. Joe Ingles, who used to play for the Utah Jazz, for his ACL, he's coming back, and he's a great shooter. So I think the Milwaukee Bucks, like you've mentioned, are going to be in good shape. But we do want to show you what we did find out yesterday about the Milwaukee Bucks, Chris Middleton, and just about how long he will be out. Chad, let's do this. Let's get ourselves ready to start digging into Russell Wilson and whether or not he is cooked. And let's talk some Green Bay Packers, because while we dissected the game against the Jets, now we've got to start looking at Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur and wondering, are these guys going in opposite directions with respect to the Packers offense? So we'll get into all that coming up next. You're watching, maybe just listening, to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios.
I can't imagine a week going by without going to the Recovery Room Bar and Grill, 7th and Mississippi Street in downtown La Crosse. I'm serious. If you know me, you know that my favorite restaurant, not just my favorite bar, but my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, is none other than the Recovery Room Bar and Grill. Whether it's their burgers, their pizza, their wings, their gyros, their prime rib, or their fish, it's all good. And the wait staff, my gosh, some of the friendliest and coolest people that you'll ever meet. Matt, the owner, great friend of mine. The Recovery Room, 7th and Mississippi Street. I can't go a week without it. How about you?
Hello, this is Professor Fission for Nuke and Nuke Light, the world's first nuclear beer. Brewed and nuked in 1956 and recently found in Warehouse 14. How's it still fresh, you may ask? Well, thanks to our friends at Cesium-137, Stromium-90, and Plutonium-239, these beers will stay fresh for another 90 years. Not only does Nuke and Nuke Light have 10 times the kick, but you're sure to be a hit at the party because it helps your urine glow in the dark.
Nuke and Nuke Light. Pick up a case today before it melts through your grocer's floor. And Eau Claire, yummy.
Now back to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center studios. 7-minute abs take him 3.5 minutes. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
What can I say, Chad? I'm efficient. If you need 7 minutes to do abs, I'll crank those out 3.5 minutes. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are you wasting your time for? Come on. Get this thing going.
That's a great question. It's a great question. Speaking of getting things going, we're just getting going here live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and LinkedIn if you're a business professional. Our good buddy Matt from the Recovery Room, the owner of the Recovery Room, home of the Trauma Center studios, of course, says, Dave, you're all good. You've got a voice for radio, brother, but you do not have a face for TV. And thank you, Matt, because that makes me feel like if I'm stalling, like, it probably is actually benefiting everybody in some roundabout way.
Yeah, and I do think it's appropriate that we're on Twitch with the way the internet is doing what it's doing.
Good call. Well, if you are just joining us here on the Sports Carnival and you happen to see my face or Chad going, but you hear us perfectly, then that is part of this morning's program because we're having a little bit of chilliness today, Chad. I walked outside with the dog about 6:30 this morning. Dude, I didn't look at the temperature, but it definitely felt like it was sub-freezing. And it turns out that it was. Not by a lot. It was like 30 or 31 degrees, but it definitely felt like it was a little below freezing. Twins Farm, who is actually right now Big D from Houston, Minnesota, Chad, not Houston, Texas, but Houston, Minnesota. Big D from Houston is checking in on his daughter's account so he could say good morning. And you don't need to LOL that at all, Big D, because we're so glad to have you. This thing's starting to get rolling again. So the P1 fan club, Chad, which had been
geared back up.
Yeah, let's just call it what it is. The P1 fan club less than excited with the kind of drivel and garbage and crap shit that they had to listen to in the morning once I was gone. Have been desperately awaiting the return of Uncle Dave. I mean, listen, nice people, and I tried to say this to everybody I could. These are nice people, okay? Yeah. They're doing their best. But when you go from the best to that, it does make you feel a little bit wanting. So Big D, glad to have you back.
Well, it's nice to hear that you're confident in yourself. That's good. Well, and we're building this thing back up. one glitch at a time.
Yes.
I love that we're reaching all the way to Houston, even if it is Houston, Minnesota.
Yes.
It's still Houston. That's cool. Houston's a big market. All we have to say is we're big in Houston. We don't have to say specifically which Houston we're talking about.
Thank you. And then former friends of ours might actually start to return our phone calls.
Yeah.
You're big in Houston? And then you tell them where, and they say, no, wrong number. Bye-bye.
You know what? I
beautiful.
think your P1 fan club was sadder. This is a joke. Okay. I was going to write this as a liner.
Okay.
Sadder than Melvin Gordon watching Monday Night Football from the sidelines last night. Former Badger. He had a rough night. And of course, the cameraman loved to catch that drama. I don't know if you were watching that, but the first couple of times I kind of chuckled. And then after a while, I was kind of feeling for him a little bit. He played, I think he had 3 carries for 8 yards or something like that. But Murray ended up doing the bulk of the carrying for the Broncos. But did you kind of feel bad for Melvin Gordon sitting over there just kind of forlorn watching the game, and then they end up losing?
I felt bad for the entire Denver Bronco faithful. I lived in Denver for a couple of years, Chad, and like I've mentioned to you before in our audience before, I've said this for years, the only other fan base for football anyways that I've found to be even closely resembling the fervency that Green Bay Packer fans have for their team is Denver Bronco fans and what they feel and how they feel about their team, the Denver Broncos. So I feel bad for Bronco Nation. Amy Lawrence, CBS Sports Radio's Amy Lawrence, who I just consider a dear friend and somebody who's actually reached out to us in support of the new program, is a lifelong Denver Bronco fan. I feel bad for everybody. And listen, Russell Wilson last night, I know Joey Miller's listening at some point this morning. Russell Wilson last night started to look good. The first quarter, 10 for 10, 116 yards. And you're like, all right, this is what the Denver Broncos needed to see. But Chad, the ineptitude, and I don't know if it's just Russell Wilson, because it can't just be one thing. In professional football of any level, really outside of Pee Wee or Pop Warner, there's a multitude of factors that go in to the whole. But you do have to start to wonder if Russ isn't perhaps past that prime time in which he was able to do the things that he did in Seattle. And then you have to start to really extrapolate this. Was Pete Carroll perhaps onto something in moving off of Russell Wilson? The haul that the Seattle Seahawks got for Russell Wilson, the only equivocation is Herschel Walker. That's it.
Right. No, and there's a lot to be expected, obviously, from Russell when you make that kind of deal. And maybe he's just a little, unfamiliar with the system. He's got a lot of pressure on him. Obviously, the team it wasn't all on him last night. By the way, the cornerback, Mathis, had 4 pass interference calls by himself. So the Denver Broncos didn't do themselves any favors. It wasn't all on Russell, but clearly his first half and the second half were a tale of two cities there, or tale of two stories.
Well, it was a tale of two halves.
Tale of two halves.
The halves were definitely a tale of two halves.
I apologize.
It's quite all right. And by the way, nobody heard that. It was glitching right out.
Okay, good.
Morning Wood is checking in. Kyle, top of the morning, big guy. And he says this: I think everyone needs to pump the brakes on the demise of the Russell Wilson talk. By the way, Morning Wood, the biggest Wisconsin Badger fan you're ever going to find. So that might color this just a little bit. If everyone remembers, and this is actually a fair point, if everyone remembers Aaron Rodgers' first season with a new system when LaFleur took over, everyone was wondering what was wrong with Rodgers. That's true. He goes on to win back-to-back MVPs. It's Russ's first year in a new surrounding, a new coach, and a new coordinator. And I do think that we have to put that into play. And that's why I said, Kyle, that you can't just look at Russell Wilson as the only issue with the Denver Broncos. But what you can do, and they did a great job pregame of Monday Night Football last night, kind of breaking this down, right? Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, what Russell was missing. And he's missing a lot. And there are plays that are there for Russell to have, plays that he might not feel comfortable making yet because it's a new system, to Kyle's point. But there are plays that are to be had. Now, I don't know that you can lose the ability to see the field in a single season, but I do wonder if you lose the ability to trust in your abilities year by year, especially after Russell, let's go ahead and be fair about this, went through a recent shoulder procedure. So he's actually a little banged up himself, and that throwing shoulder is going to absolutely come into play there. So we might be looking at a multitude of factors, but when we look at our Twitter poll right now, Chad, which is at the Sports Carney, 72.2% of respondents, when asked, is Russ cooked? 72.2% so far. say, yes, he's trash. Only 22.2% are saying it's too early to say, with 5.5% coming in. No, he's still great right now.
Well, not to add insult to injury, but I'm reading this morning on ESPN that he pulled a hamstring last night.
Oh, God.
Fighting through that in the fourth quarter, and they're going to have to evaluate that moving forward. So I don't know. I think it's too early yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards he's cooked. Maybe let's just say it this way. For the season, not necessarily for his career, but for the season, he may be a little bit cooked.
So basically, you're kind of going along the same lines maybe that Morning Wood was going on to, in that when Aaron Rodgers, and we've seen this before, but we'll go with recent examples of Packers stuff. When Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur got together the first year, the record was great, 13-3, okay?
Yeah.
But to Kyle's point, it didn't look great. And there were a lot of games in which Rodgers, compared to his career averages, there were a lot of games in which Rodgers just didn't meet those particular standards. It actually looks a lot like what we're seeing right now from the Green Bay Packers, to be fair. And that's kind of where we want to transition. If you've just joined us here, the Sports Carnival Live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and LinkedIn, if you're a business nerd, talking about the Packers, but last night's Monday Night Football game. I think it's a good correlation, though, because Kyle bringing that up, makes me think about that first year with LaFleur and Rodgers. But now we have to ratchet this back. We've come full circle, right? And now we're sitting here at a point in the Packers season in which a lot of fans didn't think we would actually be in. The Packers sort of struggling to find identity, coming off back-to-back losses to two New York teams, which just doesn't seem to happen. And yesterday, Aaron Rodgers, in sort of the recap of the game on Sunday, mentioned, and we see the tweets up here on the screen if you're watching us, from Ryan Wood. Aaron was asked, what needs to happen with this offense? And he says, quote, simpler, simplify some things. When asked, well, what needs to be simpler? All of it. Now,
what does that mean?
Good question. And that's exactly what Matt LaFleur, Chad, is currently wondering himself. When Matt LaFleur was asked about the simplification of the offense and how Aaron had sort of couched that, said this in part, I don't know what that means. Now, there's some other quotes that you're going to have to see through, and a lot of it has to do with Matt LaFleur taking this on the chin as a coach. We got to coach better. We got to be better. It's the traditional coach speak.
Yeah.
But the thing that I wanted to show our audience and read to them this morning is this, because I think this really tells the tale. And Joe DeGuano, our Green and Gold insider, if you weren't watching the show yesterday, Joe was on with us. He said basically the same thing that Matt LaFleur says. It doesn't matter what we do schematically. If we don't block better, it's hard to do anything. And I think that was really the number one issue yesterday. Now, that to me that's a coach doing his very best to say, I can't fucking coach, try. Okay? I can be in the spot, and maybe if I didn't, it's my fault. If I've got to come up with a better scheme, okay, but I can't coach, try. That's your job. You're the professional athlete. I'm the coach. You're getting paid to go do the thing. What can Matt LaFleur do? He can't play the plays for him.
Right. But we really know, reading into what Aaron Rodgers is saying, because he's saying it in a roundabout way, because if you listen to that press conference, he said, no, that, Matt LaFleur and the coaching staff, they grind it out every week. They've got the best, game plan possible in the NFL. But the bottom line is it's the personnel. It's basically the roundabout way is what he was saying. He goes, and if this is who we have on the field and this is who we believe in and this is who we're going to roll out there, we need to make it simpler for them. So in other words, it goes back to his wide receiver core he's not happy with. That's what I read into it. I may be wrong.
Well, and you may be right. I can't say that you're right nor wrong, but I will say this. The next tweet that we have on the screen here, also from Ryan Wood, asking Aaron Rodgers about the Packers' protection issues, which Matt LaFleur alluded to. And Rodgers said, quote, it's a lot of it is simple mistakes. If we're making simple mistakes on a couple of plays, to me, we need to simplify some things. He would not stump for Josh Nijman at right tackle. And we heard Joe DeGuano yesterday say, move Josh Nijman back to guard, move Elton Jenkins back to the right tackle, fix that right slot. Now, Rodgers goes on to say, that's not a question for me. Basically, if you can't block the guy, or you can't even block the run, because for those that are maybe newer football fans when it comes to the intricacies, your left tackles are generally your pass protectors. That's David Bakhtiari. They call that the blind side. The right tackles, the right guards, largely, Chad, have to do with a lot of the running game, especially with right-handed quarterbacks. It's not always the way that it is, but that's a traditional formation.
Right.
So that possibly is part of the reason why the Packers in the run game have been less than stellar, a lot less than what people and Packer fans that I know have thought that the Packers should be doing or wish that the Packers should be doing on the ground. So maybe there is something to that. But we as Packer fans, we come into these seasons, each and every season, with great optimism and great hope for a lot of great reasons. I was talking to Kyle Cable yesterday, as a matter of fact, from One Trust Real Estate, and he's 25 years old, Chad, and said, in my entire life, I've never known the Packers to not be a good and or competitive and or playoff type team, right? So we come into these seasons as Packer fans, as a collective, with a certain expectation, and we'll convince ourselves as Packer fans in large part that the team is well constructed. These are very good players that if only we could get the best out of them, they would be very good. But maybe there's just not enough horses in the stable. And one of the reasons that this happens is because your quarterback takes an exorbitant amount of the salary cap. I know we don't like to say that because it's Aaron Rodgers. He makes a lot of fucking money. And when that happens, you've got to not pay other players. Zadarius Smith is not done. He's having a very productive season for the Minnesota Vikings. Don't think he wouldn't be a welcome addition on the defensive front. There are a lot of players that the Packers probably couldn't afford because Aaron Rodgers got the contract that he did, which means this: if you take the money, then you've got to make everybody better. And then don't bitch to me about the lack of personnel, because in a hard cap league, Chad, what are you going to do? If you make 40, that's a percentage of the cap that we can't spend on other players. And historically, there has never been a Super Bowl winning quarterback, never, outside of, I think, Peyton Manning with the Denver Broncos in that last year, that actually had a quarterback that made over 18% of the entire salary cap to actually go on to win a Super Bowl. It just doesn't happen. The money isn't there for other players.
Yeah, and speaking of personnel, we had Joe DeGuano on yesterday, our Green and Gold insider. And again, right on point. It was really interesting to read those tweets and the stuff coming out of Green Bay. He was right on point, and he talked about Robbie Anderson, and he ends up going to the Cardinals, and Matthew is pointing that out. And so it doesn't look like there's going to be help right away as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, and it looks like that's really what he's angling for. And I would say, Packer Nation's got to be a little concerned when we have this. You've got the quarterback and the head coach kind of saying two different things, and it's out in the public. So now you've got a little bit of infighting. This generally happens when you're losing and you're expected to be winning. I think the good news for Packer fans is next up are the Commanders. So unless this thing is completely, totally lost in a total shit show, they should win this week, I would think. I would hope.
Well, you would think that the Packers, when you look at Commanders or the Jets, you would think that the Packers would win both of those games. And that's why Jair Alexander, after that loss to the Giants over in London, said, we got to be concerned if we lose to the Jets. Now, the Jets are not scrubs, and they're playing a lot better football than people may have given them credit for. But that's not the point. When you're supposed to beat a team, and that's your position on the hilltop, you're one of those teams that's supposed to beat the other team, even if it's not necessarily the greatest team or the best that your team has ever been. When you're supposed to beat a team, there is natural human disappointment that comes into play there. So I can totally get that. I think that what the Packers are doing right now is having a crisis of conscience. What is it that they want to do? How is it that they want to go about doing it? The special teams, again, completely failed this team on Sunday, and Rich Bisaccia was brought in for that one purpose, to fix that special teams. And when you look at what Matt LaFleur said in response to Aaron Rodgers, the simplification of the offense, says we've got to block better. Let's go to Morning Wood, though, here. He's popping back up and says this: I don't think the struggles on Green Bay's offense should be a surprise to the Packers brass. We heard all training camp that the defense was eating the offense alive. This is true. My question is why Green Bay brass did nothing to bolster the need areas before we got to this point. Packers brass is lazy. Bank on Rodgers bailing the team out. I don't know if they bank on it, but they have to, because they banked on Rodgers to the tune of all of that money, guys. You cannot give a quarterback all of that money and not expect something to drop off. Now, the Packers also gave a boatload of cash a couple of seasons back to Aaron Jones, which I didn't think was a really good idea. Running backs are typically never worth their second contracts. There's been a few that have been worth their second contracts, but I thought that was a mistake. See, I disagree with this, Kyle. I don't think the Packers brass is lazy at all. I don't believe that. I just believe that when you hamstring yourself with the kind of salary and a quarterback that you've got, that's what you live with. Look at what the Denver Broncos are going to have to live with if Russell Wilson truly is cooked. They can't move off of this guy. They gave him $250 million.
Yeah, and I don't want to, you know what? I know I sound redundant because I've said this a lot, and we've only been doing the show about a week and a half, but why are they not? I mean, I know they kind of talked a little bit about the offensive line, and maybe this has something to do with it, but why are they not running the ball more? They're not even attempting to run the ball more. In that game against the Jets, I think they only rushed for 60 yards, and it was only like 19 attempts. You got to balance it out a little bit. And again, when you go down and look at every game that was won in the NFL, majority of the time, you're going to see the team that ran the ball the most and was the most successful at running the ball and not losing the football and turning the ball over is the team that ends up winning. And those are the things to me that I think they need to address ASAP. That takes a little bit of pressure off Aaron Rodgers, takes a little bit of pressure off that wide receiver core if they actually hammer the ball a little bit more. And I know that's old school football, and maybe analytics doesn't pan out that way, but that's what I see.
Well, it's real, it's right, and analytics be damned. The analytics of football, I don't think have changed all that much. Now, you've got certain areas in which the game's different, right? You can't go over the mid. Roddy Lott wouldn't be playing the same kind of safety now that he did back in the 80s, right? In the 70s, 80s. We know that.
Right.
And the quarterbacks can't be touched to the same degree that they were before. But to me, it's like this. You run the football out of principle. You don't run the football out of respect of the running back that you've paid or the fact that you have a good or a bad running back. You run the football out of principle because running the football sets up play action. Play action sets up big plays down the field. The quarterback's best friend, I don't give a fuck what kind of wide receiver you have. The quarterback's best friend is the running game, always and forever. That will never change. If you know as a defense, the offense is not going to run the football, you tee up your line way different. I don't care if you're getting 2.5 yards per carry on the ground. I really don't. I know that's not what you want. You want 3.5 at least. Even if you get 2.5 yards per carry, but you dedicate to the run game, I guarantee you that at certain points in that game, you go hard play action, you go RPO, you go bootleg, it works. It works because you've dedicated the run. And there's also something about the offensive line. People think the offensive line are just these nameless, faceless dudes out there, really skilled players on the offensive and defensive lines. Chad, what do offensive linemen love to do the most? Do they like to pass block and stand there? Or do they like to road grade?
Yeah.
They like to road grade and go out there and blow some people up. So let your guys do what they do. Go blow some people up, run football.
It's not like A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are bad running backs. I mean, they're a couple of good backs, but you got to give these guys more touches. I mean, I really think it comes down to that. And then, part of the problem obviously is when you go down early, then you rely more on the pass, and then there's more pressure on Aaron Rodgers and more pressure on the wide receiver core. It's a vicious circle. And now you've got this infighting going on. They really need to right the ship against the Commanders. I would say this, if they lose to the Commanders, you might as well just pack it in and let's get ready for the Milwaukee Bucks and watch them because the season's over with. I mean, they have to. You hate to say it this early. I said it last week, and I think I was right. It's a must win. This is a must win.
I can't disagree with that. The Jets game, I was willing to pause on and say not a must win because the season is still at this point a dead even 3-3. If they lose to the Washington Commanders, I will agree with you that the season is at least in great peril because we've seen the Packers come back from things before, and Aaron Rodgers always tells us to relax. But if the Packers lose to the Washington Commanders, I will agree with you. The season is in great peril. I don't know if it'll be completely lost, but boy, there's like the chances of slim and none, and Slim might be walking out the door, so to speak.
Yes.
All right. We're broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, powered by the Recovery Room. When we come back here on the Sports Carnival, a guy that knows a thing or two about running the football, head coach Matt Janus of the University of Wisconsin Lacrosse's Eagles football team, who rushed for 386 yards in the 51-21 victory against Eau Claire, is going to join us next. Don't go anywhere.
The official lending team and mortgage partner of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial. You know I like to tell a joke or two and play around, have fun. But getting a mortgage is no funny business. Don't play around with your finances. Call my good friends Michael Garcia and Todd Bercuzzi of the Midwest mortgage team at Land Home Financial today. Whether you're buying your first house, maybe you're buying your second house, maybe you're a seasoned real estate investor. Midwest mortgage team, Land Home Financial, Michael Garcia and Todd Bercuzzi. Give my good friends a call today. They're the official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival. Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Now back to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center studios. He wishes he could grow a man bun, but that ship had sailed long ago. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Dude, my hair went down in the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Gordon Lightfoot wrote a fucking song about how long ago my hair went out. Before we bring our good buddy Matt Janus on, I just want to say a really quick hi and a thank you to my good friend Joe from Helping Hands Landscaping, serving La Crosse and the Onalaska areas. When you're in need of snow removal this winter, folks, or lawn maintenance and upkeep, call my friend Joe at Helping Hands Landscaping. Chad, we're pretty much taking care of all the home needs here on the Sports Carnival. Preferred Insurance. The Preferred Insurance team is the official insurance provider, Auto, Home, Life, Flood. We've got Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate, and our good buddies over at the Midwest Mortgage team, who, Chad, hooked us up with these sweet hats yesterday.
I'm excited.
Oh, my gosh. I've got your address. I'm going to be sending you this one coming up later today. So thanks so much to all of our supporters. And Matt Janus, the head coach of the University of La Crosse's Eagles football team, has always been a big supporter of mine. And, Chad, I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of Matt's coaching every day. Matt, before we get into anything and I ask you questions, I'm just going to wax poetic for a second. You know how affectionate I am towards Mike Schmidt, great friend of mine and the show. Matt, what you have done with this Eagles team over the last couple of seasons has exceeded everybody's expectations that I've ever talked to. The folks around town here, as much love as they've had for all of the past coaches, think that you are perhaps the second best coach outside of Roger Herring to ever coach at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. Now, Chad, Roger Herring is a college football all-timer, a national championship winner multiple times over. So, brother, I just want to say congratulations. Whatever you're doing, even if it's cutting the man bun, it's working.
No, hey guys, thanks for having me. No, I appreciate it, Dave. I got I got handed the reins to a pretty special program in a really good spot, and Mike is such a phenomenal job during his tenure here, and he really he laid the blueprint for everything, and I just kind of carried along with what we had going and added my own little twist to it. And the reality is, I hired really good people around me. I still don't know if I know what I'm doing, but I have phenomenal people around me that have been able to carry this thing, that have been able to instill the culture that we wanted, and obviously just a tremendous belief in this place, in this university, in the city, and in our football program.
Well, Matt, I think that being a smart guy, you know how to bring in people that can help you. And that really and truly, as a head football coach, position coaches are different. As a head football coach, your role is much more as an administrator than it is necessarily in X's and O's, even though you get into that. You call the defensive plays for the team too, but it is knowing how to put people in the right spots, especially your coaches. Let me ask you this, because I want to get into a lot of what we saw on Saturday. I was watching it on, and I didn't get the group to come with me that I'd hoped, like Jared popping up on screen here. But I watched the game in just intense interest and intrigue. And Matt, there was so much that I want to peel away from. The first thing is this: who calls your offense? Because I saw some formations, the fullback getting pulled, running back in pistol, Helter Brandon shotgun. Who is coming up with some of the offensive schemes, and who's making these calls?
Yeah, that's our offensive coordinator. That's Coach McGuire right here, and obviously Coach McGuire, our offensive line coach. They just kind of work hand in hand with everything, and they do such a good job that they're on the same page with what we're trying to get done. They do such a great job of using our personnel. We have a tremendous depth on the offensive line. We got tremendous depth at the running back position, at the quarterback, at all the skill positions. So they do such a great job putting our guys in the right spot. They do a great job game planning. I mean, they're across the hall right now, locked in their little dungeon right there, getting trying to figure out the best ways to attack Stevens Point, and have been for the last 24 hours here. But really, it's a credit to those guys and the way they've done, and we've been able to have a lot of consistency with those two guys there over the last 3 years, and our players are really, really comfortable with our schemes and what our rules are and how we attack inside zone, how we attack different fronts. So it's a credit to those guys and the creativity that they have and the consistency that they've provided to this program.
Well, Matt, the 51-21 victory on Saturday was one of the largest victories and some of the most points. Chad, if we can get that slide while we're working through this up, because I want to show this to our audience again. Yep. The 51 points were the most scored since, I believe, 1997, when UWL put up 55 points. Eau Claire traditionally had been a team that when UWL traveled to Eau Claire would come out with a victory. And when Eau Claire would come down to La Crosse would get a victory. It's starting to change now. And over the last few years with Mike Schmidt and yourself, you've been able to get some of those victories up there. But this was this was a telltale victory. And one of the things that I want to get to now is the running game, because we're talking a lot, Matt, about the lack of a running game for the Green Bay Packers. But you and I specifically have talked so much about the importance of the running game in the WIAC. And for the Eagles to be a successful team, a championship level team, the running game is going to need to be a big part of it. Now, you've got a couple of great running backs, Joey Stutzman and Brent Baum. Joey Stutzman, the leading rusher in the WIAC, had only one touch coming into Saturday's game, Coach, scored twice and had a great overall game. And Brent had a great game as well, had some good moments on kickoff and punt returns and really spelled in the second half, I thought, Stutzman quite well. Then you've got Max Helterbrand, who is your alternate quarterback. I don't know if you say 1 or 1A or A or B. I don't know how you guys do that. But Helterbrand, as your second quarterback, if you will, was great on the ground and also had some great moments through the air. But he's the number 3 rusher in the WIAC. When you look at that, Matt, is it a dedication to the game, the running game itself? Is it the fact that you've got these talented guys that can really get out there and work it? What do you think goes into making that running game so successful? Again, 386 yards on the ground.
I think there's kind of a couple different things, and you kind of hit on them. I mean, really, the first thing it's a major focus. So I give our team, we only focus on 7 things every week. It's the same 7 things every single week. And number 1 is dominate on special teams. And the very next thing after that is our rushing offense and our rushing defense. I just believe that in order to win football games, at some point you have to be able to run the football. And maybe it's to run out the clock, or maybe it's because you want to establish a run game throughout the whole game. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, you have to be able to run the football, and you have to be able to stop the run on defense. Like, I just believe in those 2 things. And so we had that with our guys, and really, then from there, then it kind of carries over to the talent that we have up front. And, we talked about it, I think last week, is just how hard that is to develop at the Division III level, how hard it is at any level to develop your offensive line to get them to where you want them to be or where you expect them to be. So we've been able to do that with the group that we've had. I mean, we got guys on our offensive line that, I was just talking about Connor Berry to our team last week. Connor Berry's been playing here since 2018 and started as a true freshman for us, and is now kind of in whatever this is, year 5 now. Year 6 technically with the COVID, right? With the COVID stuff. So to have guys like that and Cole Greco and Mike Bertoya and Alex Bongers and those guys all started in 2019. So we have a group that's very veteran led up front. And they've been together with the same offensive line coach. They've been together with the same offensive coordinator. And so that group has just been enabled them to grow. And then, you kind of said it. You're able to add a back like Joey Stutzman, and he's just such a special player. There's not many people that come around that you get the chance to coach. He's just a football guy through and through, wants to practice all the time, wants 100 carries in practice, wants 100 carries in the game, doesn't ever want to come out. He wants the ball in every critical situation. So it helps when you got guys like that. And then you add the depth with Brandt behind him. And then, we have two really talented freshman backs in that group that, towards the end of that game got to see a few carries. And then obviously with Kaiser, he brings the quarterback and Helterman brings the quarterback run game. So that's a whole new element. So now you're talking like as teams have to defend us, you got to stop the RPO. We have talented receivers on the outside. And then we got this running game where we're going to run power and zone. And then all of a sudden you got a quarterback that you have to account for in the box. That's a pretty good athlete. And has broken over the last 2 games has broken, I think, over 3 60-yard runs. So that kind of adds to that element of having to play some type of different coverages when Kaiser's in the game versus when K's in the game. And obviously the run fits that kind of come out and makes it really difficult, I think, and being a defensive guy for opposing defenses.
Well, it's got to be more than just a little difficult because, Chad, what the Eagles do, and for those that are just watching this now, maybe for the first time and haven't seen this Eagles football team, they use 2 quarterbacks. But, Matt, it's not the way that you would have seen even Tom Brady get used at Michigan, where they kind of swap players in and out, snap by snap. You give your quarterbacks series. You give them entire drives. You let that go whichever way it's going to go, and you let that entire drive work out. I would have to imagine as a defensive coordinator, that would be the height of difficulty because you've got to prepare for a guy that's more of a pocket passer, even though Cade Garcia, to his credit, had a nice little bootleg run in the first quarter versus Eau Claire, which I was really happy to see. Keeps the defense honest. Kind of like that. But it's got to be really hard to prepare for. I do want to focus on Helterbrand, though, just for a moment, because while Cade was sort of looked at as quarterback 1A and Helterbrand 1B, Helterbrand is looking like, to many, and I was talking yesterday with Kyle Cable from One Trust Real Estate, Helterbrand's looking a little bit like a Lamar Jackson type in the WIAC. Being that he's got the wheels and he can definitely get out and scramble. He's a large guy, so he's not exactly an easy tackle. And his throwing is good enough. He had a really nice play down the left side of the field, about a 45, 50-yard pass that was just beautiful. His throwing is getting to that point, too, where you have to respect the kid's ability with his arm. He went 6 for 7 in the game on Saturday. Has there ever been a time, Matt, where you've actually contemplated switching to one quarterback and saying, listen, we're just going to stay with one quarterback and we'll see what happens with this guy? Or are you pretty dedicated this entire season, as you've been from the outset, from what I can extrapolate, to saying, look, we've got 2 quarterbacks and they're both going to play no matter what?
Yeah, we've never wavered. It's always going to be the 2 quarterbacks, and I need them both to win football games. They know that. They both, and Coach McGuire does such a good job of using their strengths and everything. But we do. We need them both to be able to do this thing. There's just they both have an excellent set of skill sets, and so we got to lean on them both. And you're right. I was pleased with the way Kaiser threw the ball yesterday on Saturday. I thought, that was one thing we wanted to kind of see. And he goes, like you kind of said it, his numbers were pretty good. And, those guys, and part of what makes this, we grade our quarterbacks every game. We grade every position. And even go back to the Eau Claire game, Kaiser grades out at, I think, about 91%, and Cade grades out about 95%. So it's pretty spot on with those 2 guys. And that's why they continue to both just kind of alternate series as we go through this. And, we've been on the same page with those guys, and Coach McGuire, they've all worked together on all that. They've been on the same page the whole season, and we're going to keep it up and keep attacking it with 2 different quarterbacks.
Well, Matt, the WIAC is just an incredible league, and for what it's worth, this year in the WIAC has just been crazy because you've got teams like Stevens Point who are putting up 71 in certain games. You've got a team like Whitewater who goes to Eau Claire and plays a really tough game. Eau Claire is able to hang with this team. You blow the doors off of them. You guys, of course, had that heartbreaker here in La Crosse, 31-34 to Whitewater. But this WIAC, at least in my estimation, this year, maybe more than any, is up in the air. So let's talk about that a little bit. Where we're sitting right now, just a couple of games into the conference schedule. What are we, 3-4 games into the conference schedule now? What are the prospects for the postseason? How is everything sort of shaken out? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we would need probably Whitewater to lose twice, and we gotta win out. I mean, that's all we can control. I feel really good about getting extended games if we can win out here, and so that's what we have to do. Our team, we've discussed that as a team. We got to win the next four, and like you said, with our league, that's not easy. Like that's hard. This league is special. It really is, and everybody from the outside, we're looked on nationally as the greatest conference, and there's a reason for that. The greatest conference in Division III, and there's a reason for that because this is how our league goes. It's any given Saturday. It really is, and it's a week-to-week league. It doesn't matter what you did the week before. Every opponent that we line up to, I mean, these are physical football games. Even going back Saturday, that was a physical football game. Stout the week before was a physical football game. Why we like it's what makes our league so special. It's why I love this. That's why this coaching in our league, in our conference, in our state, like you give me one of those league schools, ours or another opponents, and you give me that and be able to coach a game on Saturday, like that's my true passion. That's what I love to do. Like there's nothing else like it in the world for me. Some people want to coach in Super Bowls and big stadiums. Like I want to be in the state of Wisconsin in the fall coaching within our league because of that, because you're going to get good coaches. You're going to get good players every single week, and every single week's going to be a battle. I can't overlook any team on our schedule in our league. You can't. Otherwise, they're going to beat you.
Matt, this is another reason that Eagles fans are so lucky to have you is that you want to be the Eagles coach. And that's why you can tell the fan base, it's just all returned. The packed houses at Roger Herring Stadium, you can just see the excitement, the enthusiasm is back. I appreciate you joining us, brother. It's always good to see you. Appreciate you. And good luck this upcoming weekend. Can't wait to see the next game.
You bet, you guys. We'll see you. Am I going to see you Saturday?
Yes, you will. You'll see me Saturday.
The Pearl Street 10?
That's right, baby.
Yeah, heck yeah. We'll see you there, man. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Go Eagles.
Hey, thank you. Go Eagles. Chad coach Matt Janus. Boy, what a guy. And we are so lucky out here to have him as the coach of our football team. All right, we're going to step aside. We got about 30 seconds in which we're going to say hi to one of our friends. You're watching and possibly listening to the Sports Carnival here broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
Now back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios here in the Sports Carnival. Insert joke here. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Okay, I'm the joke. You just have to insert me here. It's Dave, the joke Carney. Boom. There you go. Thanks so much to Matt Janus again, UWL football coach, joining the program, Chad. He's such a great guy. Breacher's checking in, and Breacher's got a cool text here for us, or I guess it's a communication. Doesn't matter. What a great job of keeping the ego out of the quarterback room.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I love
it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that. We've seen that even in the NFL. If you want to go way back in the Wayback Machine, with Slash and Neil O'Donnell and the Steelers back in the day.
Oh yeah.
But when you do the 2 quarterback deal, that can be, obviously egos do get in the way. And ultimately, as an athlete, you're trained to win out, right? You want to win that position. You want to be the guy. And so to be able to manage that as a coach has got to be kind of difficult. And apparently he's doing a hell of a job. And that run game, 336 yards rushing, that is just, that is, that you're going to win every game if you do that. That's dominating.
No, it is completely dominating. 386 actually, so 50 more than that. No, it's true dominance. You're right, and over 600 yards of total offense. The creativity, and I know you didn't get to watch this game, Chad, back there in Washington State. It was a local televised broadcast, but the creativity of the offense and just the way that they line these guys up right now, it's just tickling my fancy as a football fan. And listen, as we kind of ratchet back into the conversation, we're talking Packers this morning, the Monday Night Football fiasco we saw with Russell Wilson once again, which I'm really curious to find out from you guys if Russell Wilson is cooked in your estimation, because that's this morning's poll question. And I'll give you an update there in a second. But Chad, the creativity, the dedication to the running game, all of these different things, which we're seeing from a coach like Matt Janus and his staff, Coach McGlennon and everybody else that he mentioned, is just really fascinating for me to watch as a football fan. And as a Division III football team, this Eagles team is, I don't know, they're going to be a force in this conference, which they already are, but for years and years to come. As long as Janus is coaching this team and somebody doesn't just give him the bag, right? Like say, hey, yeah, you're great, but here's, forever money. I think that we're in pretty good shape. I saw that the future sheriff of La Crosse County was checking in here. I want to put up his tweet. Fritz Leinfelder. No, that's okay. He says, go Eagles. Chad, here's a little something for you. Fritz Leinfelder, back in the 1992 championship season of the University of Wisconsin La Crosse's national championship season, Fritz Leinfelder was a star safety, and Fritz was going to, by all accounts, Fritz was going to go to the NFL. The UWL program has actually produced a number of NFL players. Fritz was going to go to the NFL from all accounts. Fritz is about your height, my height, okay? 5'10", 5'10 and a half. Do you know how he ended up injuring himself in a famous summer basketball game?
No, dunking?
Yes, he went to dunk on like 6 guys because he had like a 42-inch vertical leap. And yeah, because he was that kind of strong safety. Goes up and apparently tears his ACL. Fritz, I'm not trying to bring up old shit and make it feel bad or anything, but it's one of those stories that like lingers in the history of the university because Fritz was an absolute baller. And now he's going to be the next sheriff of La Crosse County, which is fun. I've got an idea. Why don't we talk to Fritz tomorrow on the program? We'll bring him on, talk a little football, talk a little sheriffing.
I want to talk to him about that dunk. There was 6 dudes. You're jumping over 6 dudes. That's impressive.
Maybe it was just one guy, but it lives in infamy around campus. It really does. This great bar across the street from the campus is where I first met Fritzy. And that was what I heard right away. This guy was going to be an NFLer. And, now we've got him as the future sheriff. We're all lucky. It's going to work out.
I have to say, and obviously I don't live there, but Sheriff Fritz just rolls right off the tongue.
It absolutely does.
That sounds like a cool sheriff to me.
He's going to win in a landslide. It's not even going to be close. I feel bad for his opponent. I hope he's not watching this because I don't want to get stopped for anything. I live in Vernon County, okay? You know what's going to happen, Chad, is I'm going to put that Fritz for sheriff. I'm going to have to get like one of those big emblems like I'm the campaign manager and put it up in the back. Don't fuck with me, man. I'm sorry. I want Fritz to win. It's fine. So listen, I mentioned this poll question we got up this morning, our Twitter poll. Boy, Russell Wilson's getting he's getting trashed because when asked, is Russ cooked? We saw Russell Wilson and the Broncos just completely fall apart in the second half. This morning's Twitter poll question at the Sports Carney, okay, at the Sports Carney on Twitter is this: is Russell Wilson cooked? 74.1% of respondents so far, Chad, say yes, he is trash. 22.2% are still on the fence. It's a little too early to say, and only 3.7% of respondents this morning say no, he is still a great football player. That's not a good look for Russ. I mean, that really shows you in a state in which some people do have affection because he's got a Badger connection, even though it was just one season.
Yeah.
You can tell that I don't think the ship is sailing on Russell's celebrity or his ability to play quarterback, but it might be. I don't know. Maybe Pete Carroll was onto something.
He did have flashes of his old self early on, as we mentioned. In the first half, he had a pretty decent game. Now, again, there's more than one guy on the team, so you can't put it all on his shoulders. But yeah, his second half was pretty shitty. Again, I go back to the cornerback, Darius Mathis, who ended up having 4 pass interference calls on himself. Let's say that you only have 1 instead of 4. You probably end up winning that game, and then maybe it's a different conversation. It's more like, yeah, Russell looked pretty good in the first half, had a weak second half, but he'll pull out of it. Everything's fine. But because of the fact that they lost, obviously, that compounds it a little bit. So I think it's too small of a sample yet, but I am leaning that way, just a smidge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this unfold. Nathaniel Hackett, who was a part of the Packers organization last year, an offensive coordinator, was talked about and extolled this offseason as one of these offensive wonderkins, the genius of the future of the NFL, and boy, is it going to be awesome. And then you remember he's been coaching Aaron Rodgers for the last couple of seasons. So you have to sort of take that with a grain of salt, right? Like when Phil Jackson was coaching Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, I don't know that people gave him his just desserts for those 6 championship rings. When he goes to LA and takes over a team in Shaq and Kobe that had been floundering, good in the regular season, couldn't win in the playoffs at all. And the first year they win a championship and go on to win 3 straight, well, that pretty much sealed the deal. The case was made. Phil Jackson's the greatest coach of all time. So, there is something to be said about who it is that you're coaching. And so maybe Nathaniel Hackett was given way too much pre-credit than he deserved. But I'm watching Russell Wilson in the second half and overtime. 3 for 11 for 15 yards. That's not a professional quarterback. That's not a superstar professional quarterback at the very least. So I'm sort of leaning towards he is cooked as well. Maybe we fence this for a little bit, but I don't know. It doesn't look good. Now, this doesn't look great for the Bucs. The NBA season is going to open up this evening, and we've got a couple of games. Philadelphia is going to open up against, I had it up here. The Sixers are playing first, and then it's the Lakers and the Warriors, which the Warriors getting their championship rings will be about the only thing that I want to see. Oh, by the way, bet the Warriors -6 tonight with every one of your dollars from your savings account. Okay, the Warriors are going to win by 25 points this evening. Dennis Schroeder's going to be out for 3 weeks. Russell Westbrook Jr., the 5th, is a probable. The Lakers are going to be trash, and you can go ahead and pile up on those Warriors. But the Milwaukee Bucks open up their season on Thursday versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Chris Middleton, the second best player arguably on the Milwaukee Bucks, and somebody that we know was desperately missed in last year's postseason, is going to be out, according to Sam Sharina, for about 3 weeks. So yesterday, this tweet came out from Sam Sharina that said Chris Middleton expected to miss the first few weeks of the regular season, rehabbing from that wrist surgery. We also know that Pat Connaughton is going to be out for about 3 weeks. And big, Boomstick, thank you. That's Eric from La Crescent, Philly versus Boston. Appreciate that. So that's tonight's opening game. But we know that Middleton will be out for at least the first couple of weeks. I think that going back to your earlier comment, Chad, the Bucs are going to be just fine, right? They'll be just fine. They'll weather the storm. The NBA season, much more a marathon than it is a sprint. You know that you're going to get into a lather. You'll work into it. I think the Bucs will be okay. But I don't know that the Bucs, if Chris Middleton isn't able to be 75% available for the majority of this season and into the postseason, I don't know that the Bucs can really do much in the playoffs without a guy like Chris Middleton. So you hate to see him out. You get him through the regular season. Just get him healthy, though, for the playoffs. That's what you really, really need to worry about.
Yeah, and we saw it last year in the Eastern Conference Finals without Middleton. They struggled a little bit against Boston and obviously lost, didn't end up going to the finals. I think if Middleton would have been in the lineup for the majority of the end of the season and into the playoffs, that might have came out a little bit different. And who knows if we're talking about the Warriors getting a ring tonight. We might have been talking about the Bucks getting a ring tonight. So, or Thursday night, I guess would be technically. So I think he has that big of an impact, but I see a huge season for Janus. I think Janus is going to be in the running again for MVP. He'll be a top 3 guy. He is every season. And as long as you have that guy and a couple of surrounding guys that can do some stuff, which they do, they'll be just fine.
I agree. And Janus is absolutely going to be in the contention for MVP again. This guy is probably for the next, I would say, 6 to 7 years, because he just turned, I think, 26 years old. For the next 6 to 7 years at least, is going to be in contention for the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year on a year in and year out basis. The thing about Janus that I really, really enjoy, and we were talking about this a bit yesterday ourselves, Chad, the thing about Janus that I really enjoy is his mentality and the way that he is able to, by virtue of his leadership, effort leadership, meaning first to practice, last to leave, always the one diving on the floor for the loose balls, all of those things, right? Playing the kind of defense that he does. Because of that leadership, it really does. That's the boat, the tide that rises all ships, right? He brings everybody else up. So in a short-term vacuum, you can miss Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday if you've got Janus. If you don't have Janus, you basically need everybody else to be nearly perfect in order to be that kind of a team. But when you've got Janus and the way that he just carries himself and how he leads this team, they're going to be just fine. I'm pretty excited about the start of the NBA season tonight. I'm not going to lie. I don't think the Lakers are good. I'm curious to see what the Warriors are going to do. They gave Jordan Poole, who got punched by Draymond Green, a huge contract extension. Wiggins got a contract extension. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like. The Philadelphia 76ers, I know people want to get all on these guys because Joel Embiid's talented and James Harden 10 years ago was in shape. So I get that. But I don't think Philadelphia is going to be that much of a threat. I really don't.
What's the over-under on street clothes as far as the Lakers go, and how many games he's going to play? Is it going to be over 40 or under 40?
Yeah, we should have done that. I'm gonna go slightly over 40. I would say under 60, over 40.
If you're not familiar with street clothes, that's Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
That's what Charles Barkley calls him.
Greatest nickname ever, by the way. Greatest nickname ever. All right. Thanks again to our friends at the Midwest Mortgage Team, official mortgage partner of the show, Preferred Insurance, official insurance provider of the show, Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate, your official real estate agent of the Sports Carnival, Helping Hands Landscaping, our good buddy Joe, and of course the Recovery Room, our good buddies over there at the Recovery Room, powering the Trauma Center Studios. Chad, fun show today. Thanks to Matt Janus, too. He was awesome.
Awesome. Love Matt. Great guest.
See you guys tomorrow.